Join us for a little book banter. It's time for Coffee on the Coast. Good afternoon and welcome to Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Therese. So happy to be joined by Therese Horstgetter from the award-winning Manitowoc Public Library. Therese is here for a little book banter. So great to see you again, Therese.
Oh, so good to do this again. Yeah.
And we were just talking before we went live. I found this quote and we thought we should lead with it. We lose the habit of reading because we're afraid of wasting our time. We think we need to be productive and on the go at all times, but people are not machines, and you are nourished by naps and fiction and basking in sunlight, no less than by food and drink. Ah, that makes me feel so good to know that.
That is very good. We should have that published somewhere that we can hand it out.
Right? Because I do sometimes feel guilty by not doing something more productive and,
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
and reading. And I sometimes feel like I have to give myself permission time to do that. But
Yeah.
it's so beneficial. And I'm so glad that we're here to talk about books. And I know you've got some good recommendations. So would you like to dive right in?
Sure.
Cool. Let's talk about what you're reading currently. You said you're right in the middle of Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda.
I am. Um, I'm about two-thirds of the way through. It takes place at a little area called Hollow's Edge, a nice little neighborhood. I not far away from everybody, but just, more of a cul-de-sac is the way I picture it in my head. And um, lots of the neighbors happen to work at a college nearby, and and it's the kind of neighborhood where they drop in on each other and they have picnics for the holidays, that kind of thing. And a year and a half ago, a couple in the neighborhood, Brandon and Fiona Truitt, were found deceased in their house, and somebody had opened their connecting door to their garage, started up their car, closed the garage door, and that's how they died. A woman from the area ended up going to prison for it, but then the charge was turned over, and she is back, and now they have to find out since she's saying she didn't do it. And so you have all these people who testified against her, and there she is, and or who said, they all had cameras outside, that kind of thing. So people are wondering if they did the right thing. And there's like a member of the neighborhood is a policeman, so he was kind of involved in that, but also involved with all the neighbors and how they looked at things. So it's being really good. It just took a big turn that I didn't expect here. Um, and it's a very quick read. It's just a very easy, even though you have several neighbors, it's not overwhelmed with people, and it's just being a really good a good read. Hmm.
Interesting. So it's neighborhood dynamics, then complicated by what you said
Right.
is potentially one of the neighbors committing this crime, the
Right.
neighbors standing up and testifying about it, and now
Yeah.
she's back. They must be, really kind of nervous and wondering, are they next if she's really, this killer?
Yep.
So does something like that happen? I'm just projecting. I have not read the story, so.
um at this point, and this was already in a blurb, so not to tell you anything ahead, anonymous notes start appearing, and so we don't know really who is there's part of that dynamic seems to be um, people stayed grouped in certain things with secrets, like someone who didn't know her husband was going to leave her, but everybody else did, that kind of thing. So there are some secrets that way with relationships, and like with the woman returning, and yeah, so it's quite good.
So
I'm
definitely
hoping
more
that
than
it
meets the
turns out as
eye.
well as it's been, that it stays that way. Yeah.
Well, okay, so you heard it here, folks. Therese is recommending, I'm going to just pull it up again, Such a Quiet Place, a novel by Megan Miranda. And I have to say, Therese, I have never been steered wrong by reading one of your recommendations. Although I do
Well, I
have to
hope
admit
not.
that some of the more horror ones I've given a pass, but I definitely want to
Oh,
check this one out.
yeah. And she has written like 5 others that are kind of in the same when you look at the covers for certain authors, you just kind of know it's them, or it's like, "Oh, yeah, I've read her before." And I can't say that I have read any of hers, but I'm familiar with the titles, and this one is a good one.
I just want to read too what it says at the top of the book. It says, "Oh boy, does Miranda ever know how to write a twisty, turny ending, or
Yep.
two, or more."
Yep.
That
Yeah,
sounds
I'm
fun.
anxious to get to the end.
So I wonder if now we're just supposing here because we haven't read the end of the book. I wonder if the woman that already did time or got her sentence overturned, if it's going to turn out that she wasn't even to be implicated in the first place. It's so the thought of all these twists and
Yeah.
turns.
Yep. I know. I have a few guesses right now, but yeah, we have to wait and see.
So the next one that I think is going to be super interesting to read about, completely different from Such a Quiet Place, is called The Boys. And this is a memoir of Hollywood and family about Ron Howard and Clint Howard. Tell us more
Right.
about this.
This one, I just, as soon as I saw it, say in our book page, somewhere that you're getting the previews of books, I thought, oh, I think that will be a nice one to read. It's on my shelf at home. I've only opened it once just to see, and there was a foreword from Ron Howard's daughter in there to start off. And I just think it's going to be a nice read about them. I think I've always thought, boy, he grew up on TV, but with a lot of these people that seem like good people.
Hmm.
And it does say, the little bit that I looked at it, their parents actually left Midwest, went to California hoping to be actors. And then their sons became actors, and they just put
Oh,
everything into them to helping them. I think I recognized his dad that he must have done some smaller parts here and there. But I don't know about the mom, if she really had, but yeah, they just seem like it would have been such a good group of people growing up with. If, being a young actor like that, you would hope that you have someone that these other people that are not your, family are really your second family that's there for you.
right. Especially when you consider the age that he was when he did Mayberry, for example.
Right.
He really grew
And
up on
yeah,
screen.
and his brother has been in a lot of things. He has them in a lot of his movies. He's been on a lot of TV shows too. They both have. It sounds like he struggled a bit along the way, but made his way back to a good place.
Hmm.
So
Is it
yeah, I
written
am
by
looking
Ron
forward
Howard?
to it. I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, sorry. Is it written by Ron Howard or is it written
Yes.
by? Oh, okay.
Yep. So I looked to see, I couldn't remember if he had written anything else. I didn't see anything that was just him. He may have contributed along the way, but I did not see another one by him. But
Okay.
but otherwise, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I think it is going to be really interesting and hopefully have the same feel that I had all this time watching him grow up and becoming a director, and yeah,
Yeah, he is one of those actors that you just have like the good feels for. Hopefully
right.
justified, right? I have no
Yep,
idea off
I hope
screen,
so. Yeah,
but he just has that persona of being, that Midwestern, likable,
yeah,
trustworthy, authentic kind of guy.
definitely.
So I wasn't even aware that he had a brother. So I looked up Clint Howard. And it's funny, as soon as I saw his picture, I'm like, oh,
Oh,
that
yeah.
guy.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you
he's been a
know him
character
from
actor in a
all
ton
over.
of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just thinking one of the latest, and this is still probably how old, I remember him being on Seinfeld, and, he was in shows all along. When you look at, a list of the things they were in, it's just amazingly long for both of them.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to put that cover back up. So we're talking about The Boys, a memoir of Hollywood and family, Ron Howard and Clint Howard. And really, it'll be kind of insight into a bygone era too, I imagine.
I would think so. Well, because it does say it has to do with how you prep as an actor and things like that too. It is not just, this is where I was, this is what I did, that there's more put into it about the whole experience of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to it.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, let's see. Moving on, completely shifting tracks again. Let's talk about The Good Killer, a novel by Harry Dolan.
Okay, this one is from 2020. It's not a brand new book. And it starts out with a couple, Sean and Molly, living a quiet life in Houston. And Sean heads to a local mall one day where a stranger who is depressed after a breakup with the woman he was seeing pulls out a gun at the store she works and just starts killing people that are nearby. Well, Sean is a former soldier and pulls out a gun and kills the man to stop him. But Sean did not want credit for it. He did not. He just took off as soon as he could. And, but he ended up, of course, on Facebook. And the police eventually found who he was and came to find him. And they were living a quiet life and trying to stay below any kind of radar, both him and his wife. And um, they need to take flight when two men from his past find him on Facebook or wherever, the news at this point, once it did get out, and they are both looking for him. One seeks revenge for his brother's death, and the other wants the treasure that Sean and Molly stole from them years ago.
Oh,
So there's a
intriguing.
whole big backstory that you get to go into, and yeah, it's
So
there's
they
not
were
too much
living,
more I can say except that it becomes people trying to get to people and people trying to avoid people, and of course finding out what happened, that you know with the brother's death and this treasure that you learn about.
interesting.
So,
So they
yep.
were living a quiet life because they had a
Hmm.
past that they
Yep.
really didn't want to catch up with them. So
Yep.
I wonder, should they have been in such a quiet place? Or
I don't think they would have fit in there very well. I have a feeling yeah, they wouldn't have wanted people even knowing them that well.
so that's a really interesting, plot line for a story. That seems pretty unique. And I just want to pull up this blurb about the book. It says, a wickedly clever and exhilarating thriller. The Good Killer offers a sophisticated, breathtaking look at the extremes people will reach for love, greed, and survival. Oh my gosh.
Yep. Yeah. It was good. It was good and a fast read again. Sometimes books just get bogged down with too many people, or it's too much to keep track of. But
Mhm.
anything I was discussing here today, it's even if they have a few, it's enough that you can just stay with it, though.
So, with the holidays coming up, would you say that this is a good book to maybe, if you have a day off or something to pick up in the afternoon?
Sure.
Very
I
nice.
would not. I would not say put it on the shelf.
Nice. So that was The Good Killer that we were just talking about by Harry Dolan. Let's talk about Lizzie and Dante, a novel by Mary Bly.
Okay, this is kind of a mainstream fiction. It was recommended to me by one of my volunteers who read it and just loved it, said, "You have to read this." And Lizzie is on a working vacation um, with her best friend Gray and his movie star boyfriend on the island of Elba, just off the coast of Italy. So she is going to work with a script. She is supposed to be helping Rohan, or I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, Rohan. Rohan is the boyfriend, and he is the famous movie star. So people notice him immediately. And she thought, oh, a paid vacation, I can take that. Well, Lizzie has her own issues, that she is quite ill, but does not want to tell certain people about that. Just her best friends are going to be learning of that. But on the island, she meets Dante, who is a chef that is well known, um, which she doesn't realize when she meets him. They just meet on the beach. And he is a fantastic, but she thinks overly creative, and so do I personally. Chef. Licorice, black licorice, and fish together just does not sound right to me. But so that was just one thing they really pointed out that he decided to have. Not licorice, of course, but the flavor in something. And he has a 12-year-old daughter who's kind of a matchmaker and is hoping that her dad and Lizzie will, you know, become a couple. And she kind of is, this little girl is kind of all over and just, kind of hangs with the adults. And she's done that all her life. So she's a nice little character there. And her best friend Gray is, they were in foster care together. That's how they met. And they've stayed best friends all their lives. And so they each have things to do with, or concerns with Lizzie's illness, and then with the men. It's like one day one of them wants to get married, and then the next day the other one says he's ready to. But at, at this point, and this is another one, I'm 2/3 of the way through reading this one at work. And so it's being quite good, and you hope, I think you just have your own hopes on how you want everything to turn out, of course. And so it's a little bit of a romance, and or more than a little romance, but yeah. And then just this turmoil with each of them for different reasons.
So I imagine then it sounds like if she's got an illness that is potentially life threatening, like if she feels like her time is short, it would
Hmm.
be complicated,
Right.
the thought of starting a new relationship, especially in a young girl's life. Wow.
Yep. Definitely.
And you
So
don't know how
there's,
it ends yet.
nope, I don't. It's kind of fun because then when I finish them up, it's like, oh, good. I hope everybody likes this yet, when you do get to the end. But I think, it's as good of a story. So it is well
Mhm.
worth recommending, I think.
Again, it sounds like a great plot, kind of a
Yep.
unique twist on a story. And I have already put a hold on it. So I'm excited.
And this one, it's kind of fun. After I had already selected it to use for today, I had a few magazines home. Um, and it was in, say, like Woman's Day or something, and they have like 3 books selected for the week, and that was one of them. So it's always nice to see that, somebody else put it out there to say, I thought this was good enough to feature. So
Yeah. Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome. That's nice to know too that it's that
yeah.
topical, right?
And this
This
author,
recommendation.
oh, sorry, this author writes under a different name also, that she writes romances under, Eloisa James. Oh, and the really fun part with her, for being someone who writes romance, she is married to a genuine Italian knight. So
What?
it was just kind of a fun little tidbit about her. Yeah.
That's cool. And so when we say her, we're talking about Mary Bly, who wrote
Yes.
Lizzie and Dante.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
have
So
to
that
say,
was just kind
Therese,
of fun.
the story of this book doesn't necessarily fit the mold of a lot of the other books that you recommend. There's not the
Right.
thriller or suspense
Yeah.
or even horror component. So that's nice. A
Yeah.
nice little like piece of candy, a little piece of sweets.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we saved for last the last. We've got The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward and The Last Thing He Told Me. So let's start by talking about The Last House on Needless Street. I just have to read on the cover, there's a blurb by Stephen King. So by Stephen King, like the man, the master of horror. And he says it's a true nerve shredder that keeps its mind blowing secrets to the very end. Therese,
Hmm.
tell us more.
It it was a good book. It is, I think I I would just say it was just freaky to me. I don't have a really good, simple word for it other than that. Um,
Freaky.
yeah, and this was one of the descriptions of it. In a boarded up house on a dead end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of three. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time. A man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory. And a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible.
What? The cat?
Yeah. An unspeakable secret binds them together. And when a new neighbor moves in next door, what is buried out among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. And like you said, with Stephen King's blurb about it, it really was. I said there was a little part, it almost got to be a little hard to read. Like, boy, am I getting, what I should be. And then it's about that time that things turn and you start understanding a little bit more until you get to the final ending, which um, was actually kind of heartbreaking, but it was very good.
Wow, so
Yep.
nerve shredding and heartbreaking.
Yes. Yep.
And is it also terrifying? I mean, is there like a sense of
It's it's not so much terrifying that way. It is how do you want to say it? The the way you feel about situations people may be in that you would have no control over, and kind of when you find out about them, it's like, why did no one know? Or why could no one help these people? And like I said, with those three in there, and they all tell the story somewhat, including the
even the cat?
cat,
What?
including the cat, and so yeah, it's very it was even though I like things that are mysteries and, suspense and all, this didn't quite fit either of those exactly. It had a little of everything in it. But yeah, the freakiness is definitely there.
All right, so there you have it in a word. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Freaky. Nerve shredder,
Yep.
that is freaky. Okay, so then what about The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave?
Yep. The last thing he told me is about a couple, Hannah and Owen, and he disappears one day. He leaves and just doesn't come back when she's expecting him to. And then she realizes he's left a simple little note for her that just says, protect her. And he has a daughter, that teenage daughter, and she does not get along with Hannah, the teenage daughter from a previous marriage. She does not get along with Hannah, but when he leaves this note for her, she also finds out between phone calls and actually the news on TV that the FBI is swarming all over the country, all over the company he worked for, and she doesn't really know what happened. She has no contact with him. He's not answering calls, and she has friends that are coming out saying, well, I knew this, but I didn't know that. And then different forms of law enforcement that show up. But she doesn't know quite who to trust.
Oh.
So,
So he's not necessarily dead. We don't know that he's
nope,
dead based on what you
we
said.
don't think
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And yeah, so this one has, there'll be FBI, then there's someone else that shows up and says you shouldn't trust that guy. And then her daughter, or his daughter, ends up, Bailey is her name. The two of them end up on a road trip trying to find out what would have gotten him in this trouble in the first place. It's not just the company itself, but there was more leading up to that. So
Mm.
as they find things out, they just kind of work together. And at some points, of course, still don't. But yeah,
Interesting. And so the fact that so many different forces are rallying around makes it
Right,
seem like he wasn't just necessarily a regular Joe. Like, is that something
right.
that's discovered or okay,
Yep. Yeah, they do say he's not who he said he was. And so, of course, then they have to get past that to, be looking further, trying to find what this what this background actually is that brought them all to this point.
interesting.
Yeah.
And have you finished this one?
Yeah. This was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So we're talking about The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Sounds like it's also a Reese Witherspoon's book club pick and on the
Yeah.
New York
Yeah.
Times bestseller list.
Yeah. I can't say I don't always look at that. I don't know if a lot of people do and really follow them. But yeah, it happens often enough that, just by accident, those are things we pick. Yeah,
Yeah. Nice. What a great selection that you shared with us today, Therese. I'm really excited to dig into most of them.
I hope
I would
so.
love to know what you think of them once you finish the ones that are in progress. Viewers, if you've had a chance to read any of these books, would love to know what you thought about them. For example, is freaky the word that you would use to describe the last house on Needless Street? Let us know your thoughts and let us know if you've got some recommendations or if there's any books that you'd like us to review on future shows. Therese, it was awesome talking to you again, and thank you for
This
the
was
great
fun.
recommendations.
It was
We'll see
fun.
you next
Thanks.
time. Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much for tuning in today for Coffee on the Coast. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, everyone.